This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome to the National Environmental Policy Act, also known as NEPA, introductory course on water quality and stormwater provided by the Florida Department of Transportation's Office of Environmental Management. The environmental review, consultation, and other actions required by applicable federal environmental laws described in this training are carried out by FDOT pursuant to 23 U.S.C. Section 327 and a Memorandum of Understanding dated December 14, 2016, executed by FHWA and FDOT. The purpose of this course is to provide instruction on water quality and stormwater evaluation as described in Part 2, Chapter 11 of the PD&E Manual. This course has 4 lessons that provide an overview and procedures in the water quality and stormwater chapter. By the end of this module, you will have a better understanding on water resources, the procedure for evaluating water quality and stormwater, how to evaluate impacts, permit requirements, and drainage. Lesson 1 will provide an overview. Water resources are protected by the procedural aspects of the National Environmental Policy Act and the substance criteria in the Clean Water Act and Florida Statutes. The PD&E Manual, Part 2, Chapter 11, provides the procedure for complying with water sources protection laws and ensure that all FDOT projects are evaluated for potential impacts on water quality from stormwater runoff. The water resources that are discussed in Part 2, Chapter 11 focus on stormwater discharges to surface water and groundwater. The chapter does not cover impacts to wetlands and other surface water impacts not related to stormwater. Wetland evaluation procedures are addressed in the PD&E Manual in Part 2, Chapter 9.
Lesson 2 goes over the procedure of evaluating impacts. During the PD&E study, an impact evaluation to water resources is required for projects which qualify for screening through the FDOT Efficient Transportation Decision-Making, or ETDM, process. The impact evaluation is completed through the Water Quality Impact Evaluation Checklist. The level of evaluation depends on several factors such as involvement with water resources, quality of water resources, potential impacts, the potential for water quality improvements, and impacts to soil source aquifers. There are several agencies and stakeholders such as the Florida Department of Environmental Protection and the water management districts that must be involved in the process and are engaged early through the FDOT Efficient Transportation Decision-Making process. The project is located near water bodies with the Basin Management Action Plan, or BMAP, or Reasonable Assurance Plans, RAP. The department must coordinate with stakeholders. Coordination with BMAP and RAP stakeholders may also identify the level of water quality evaluation. Additional agencies and stakeholders with whom should collaborate and whether any potential regional water resource improvement opportunities exist in the project area. The goal of early coordination is to proactively identify potential water quality and water quantity requirements and critical areas of stormwater concerns, and to explore opportunities for joint stormwater projects that can address those issues with stakeholders. Stakeholder coordination includes the environmental look-around process. The environmental look-around process provides an opportunity for assessing and utilizing options for FDOT to partner in innovative, cooperative regional stormwater management projects. The anticipated outcomes of the environmental look-around process leads to improved environmental benefit and reduced stormwater management costs. The project manager should convene environmental look-around meetings after stormwater requirements are estimated, but before stormwater design decisions are established. The FDOT Drainage Manual provides additional guidance on the environmental look-around process. Additional coordination is required if the project is federally funded and within a sole source aquifer, such as the Biscayne sole source aquifer or the Volusia sole source aquifer. Projects with federal funding located within the boundaries of a designated sole source aquifer must be planned and designed to assure that the project will not contaminate the aquifer. Coordination begins in the ETDM process and continues throughout the PD&E study. Coordination with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Region 4 Groundwater and Underground Injection Control Office is required. Documentation of U.S. EPA's concurrence is included in the environmental document. Generally, projects not qualifying for ETDM screening have no significant environmental impacts and therefore may need only a minimal water quality evaluation rather than a full evaluation. For those projects that do not qualify for screening through the ETDM process and do not require completion of a water quality impact evaluation checklist, there must be documentation provided for the environmental document to show that the project has no significant effect on the water quality. These documents include the Type 1 categorical exclusion and non-major state actions and some Type 2 categorical exclusions. For those projects that do qualify for screening through the ETDM process, water quality and water quantity evaluation begins in conjunction with the planning screen and programming screen. During the planning screen, the preliminary environmental discussion is developed and provides a discussion about known potential project involvement with surface water bodies and groundwater and their classification. This information is provided to the environmental technical advisory team agencies for their comments. During the programming screen, more detailed information is known. Potential project involvement with surface and groundwater resources are included in the preliminary environmental discussion and advanced notification. Coordination with the district drainage engineer, permit coordinator, and other district staff to explore opportunities and options for stormwater treatment should begin during this time. The results of the ETDM screening are used to further scope the upcoming water quality evaluation effort in the PD&E study. In order to effectively utilize the ETDM process, the following types of data are included in the preliminary environmental discussion for surface water or groundwater in order for the environmental technical advisory team to provide action-oriented comments. For surface water, identify parameters such as surface water body and the ultimate stormwater discharge point, special provisions of those receiving water such as whether it is an outstanding Florida water or aquatic preserve, whether the project is within a permitted municipal separate storm sewer system or MS4, and other factors listed on the screen. For groundwater, identify parameters such as the mechanism for groundwater recharge, the aquifer, whether the location is with a sole source aquifer, any nearby springs or spring sheds, and whether there is an applicable Basin Management Action Plan or BMAP, or a Reasonable Assurance Plan or RAP. Also, water control districts or regional water authorities with potable water well fields. The purpose of water quality impact evaluation checklists is to identify and characterize water resources in the project area, assess the project's potential impacts to water resources, identify and evaluate mitigation measures, and document the coordination that has occurred. A checklist is required for each alternative if more than one alternative is analyzed in detail. Unless the alternatives are in the same drainage basin, the process begins with obtaining data to evaluate potential water resource issues. Information can be obtained from the environmental look-around meeting, which will assist the development of the checklist and the drainage design objectives. The checklist should be completed prior to finalizing upon siting analysis. The results are summarized in the environmental document and preliminary engineering report. Water Quality Impact Evaluation Checklist has 5 parts. Part 1 includes basic project information, provide the project name, county, financial management, and federal aid project numbers, and a brief description. Part 2 is a determination of the scope of the evaluation, determine if the project discharges to surface or groundwater, alters a drainage system, and whether the project is located within an MS4. If the answers to all of the questions are no, then complete the applicable sections of Part 3 and 4, and then complete Part 5. If the answer to any of the questions are yes, then continue with Part 3 of the checklist. Part 3 describes the characteristics of the basin and receiving waters and requires the following information. The first portion focuses on surface waters. List the receiving waters names, the water management district with jurisdiction, the date of the environmental look-around meeting, and attached meeting notes, and applicable water control district. State whether the project is located within a springshed or recharge area. The remainder of Part 3 is about groundwater. Identify whether the project is within a sole source aquifer. If yes, complete Part 5D and the sole source aquifer checklist from EPA. Identify if there are aquifers, spring vents, wellhead protection areas, or groundwater recharge areas. If karst conditions are expected or if the water body is identified as impaired, the analyst must notify the district drainage engineer as a higher level of treatment may be needed. Part 4 describes water quality criteria. List all water body identification numbers and parameters if the water body has been identified as impaired or has a total maximum daily load or TMDL. Limits established by FDEP. This information is to be provided in Table 1. We will review Table 1 in the next slide. If a BMAP or RAP is applicable, additional information needs to be provided in Tables 1 and 2. We will review Tables 1 and 2 on the upcoming slides. Identify if there are recommendations from the ETAT. Identify if the BMAP stakeholders have been contacted if applicable. Identify if the TMDL program has been contacted if applicable. Identify if the RAP stakeholders have been contacted if applicable. Identify if there are regional water quality projects identified from the environmental look-around process. If so, describe potential effects and discuss any other relevant information, such as if more stringent treatment requirements are warranted. Attach notes from all coordination meetings listed in Table 2. Table 1 describes water quality criteria. List water body names and identifying numbers and classification status. Identifying whether there are special designations that apply, such as outstanding national resource water, outstanding Florida water, aquatic preserve, wild and scenic river, special water, a surface water improvement and management or SWIM designation, special designation in a local comprehensive plan, inclusion in an MS4 or other designation. Identify applicable numeric nutrient criteria or NNC for lakes, spring vents, streams, or estuaries. Identify if the water body has an impaired status. Identify if there are TMDL parameters. Identify pollutants of concern. Identify if there is a BMAP RAP plan or SSAC, sole source aquifer. Table 2 summarizes the results of stakeholder coordination. Be sure to identify if additional coordination or follow-up is needed after the PD&E phase is complete. Part 5 describes the documentation required. Identify the appropriate level of involvement by selecting the appropriate boxes A, B, or C. In Box D, identify if EPA has reviewed and attached the concurrence letter. print your name, and sign and date the form. Remember that requirements sometimes change during the life of the project and may require changes in the project. Summarize the results of the water resource evaluation, involvement and impacts in the environmental document. Summarize the best management practices needed to address water quality and quantity impacts both during and following construction. State whether the project will meet criteria and requirements for both stormwater quantity and water quality criteria. Maintain the wiki in the project file to support the conclusion made in the environmental document. More information based on the type of environmental document can be found in Part 2, Chapter 11 of the PD&E Manual. The PD&E Manual, Part 2, Chapter 22, contains additional guidance on commitments. Commitments may be derived from a number of sources, such as permit conditions, BMAP or RAP commitments, and the environmental look-around process. Commitments may also include other actions necessary to advance the project, such as action to be taken by the contractor, structures that may be needed to increase water quality, features that may need to be built to improve water quality, actions to enhance hydrologic connectivity, and other projects that improve groundwater recharge or facilitate water reuse. Commitments must be coordinated with other FDOT offices to ensure they are feasible.
If there are design changes in the project after the environmental document has been approved, a reevaluation will be necessary. A reevaluation is also required to advance the project to the next phase, such as right-of-way or construction. Document any changes that may affect water quality, including updating the status of permits and commitments. The PD&E Manual Part 1, Chapter 13 provides additional guidance on the reevaluation process. Lesson 3 covers permits. This section summarizes the primary permits and programs designed to aid in improving water quality and addressing water quantity impacts. Refer to the PD&E Manual Part 1, Chapter 12 for more information on FDOT procedures for obtaining environmental permits. For this overview, we want to focus on 3 permits and programs: the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDS, Stormwater Permit Program, the TMDL program, and the Environmental Resource Permit, or ERP. These permits will be further discussed. Water quantity impacts associated with transportation projects are usually addressed through the permitting of stormwater management systems. General permit requirements prohibit FDOT stormwater projects from causing adverse water quantity impacts on receiving waters in adjacent lands, causing adverse flooding to on-site or off-site property, adversely impacting existing surface water storage and conveyance capabilities, adversely affecting the quality of receiving water such that state water quality standards will be violated, causing adverse secondary impacts to water resources, adversely impacting the maintenance of surface or groundwater levels or surface water flows, and adversely impacting the work of the district. General permit requirements require stormwater systems to be capable of performing and functioning as proposed and to comply with any applicable special basin or geographic area criteria. The Federal Clean Water Act established the NPDS Stormwater Permit Program to regulate water pollution caused by MS4 and construction activities less than 5 acres. In Florida, the NPDS program is administered by FDEP, but is not the same as the ERP program. FDOT has a regulated MS4 operator and has developed a statewide stormwater management plan, or SSWMP, that describes activities, methods, and procedures to reduce pollutants. The statewide stormwater management plan is applicable because FDOT is a regulated MS4 operator. Regulated operators must obtain the NPDES permit and implement statewide stormwater management plan to the maximum extent possible. Techniques include management practices, control techniques, system design, and engineering methods. Florida has also established the Total Maximum Daily Load, or TMDL program, as required by the Federal Clean Water Act to improve water quality from a point source, as non-point sources for waters are identified as impaired by FDEP. TMDLs may be implemented through BMAPs, NPDES permits, or other strategies. FDEP implements a reasonable assurance program to restore water bodies to meet their designated uses and alleviate the need to establish TMDLs. The list of approved RAPs is found on FDEP's website and is updated regularly. Additionally, Florida requires the environmental resource permit to regulate activities involving the alteration of surface water and to provide for wetlands and other surface water protection. The environmental resource permit is administered by the applicable water management district and prescribes stormwater management requirements. Generally, for transportation projects, the environmental resource permit requirements regulate stormwater discharges leaving FDOT right-of-way. Typically, post-development discharge is limited to no greater than pre-development discharge. Additionally, requirements may apply in the areas of flooding or where there is limited stormwater conveyance infrastructure. Environmental resource permits are generally applied for after the drainage design is substantially complete, after the Phase 2 design process, and obtained prior to construction.
Lesson 4 is stormwater management and pond siting analysis. Stormwater management, including pond siting, are established during PD&E. For each PD&E alternative, analysis is required to identify drainage issues, the overall stormwater management approach, design concepts to mitigate runoff, and estimate general size and potential location of stormwater management facilities. The documentation is either a concept drainage design report or a pond siting report, and is summarized in the environmental and engineering documents. During the environmental look-around process, opportunities for innovative stormwater management projects should be identified. This coordination should occur after stormwater needs are identified, but before pond sites have been selected. Look for both regulatory and regional issues and seek out opportunities for cooperative solutions. Explore if there are applicable benefits such as long-term maintenance or cost savings that might result from joint stormwater solutions. This approach is intended to foster our stewardship of our shared water resources. Types of innovative stormwater management that may include joint use, ponds, stormwater reuse, off-site stormwater activities such as dredging, circulation improvements, or septic tank conversion. A pond siting analysis is required during the PD&E study for all stormwater ponds requiring right-of-way. The location of ponds for the preferred alternative must be evaluated for potential impacts. Pond siting must consider innovative stormwater opportunities identified through the environmental look-around process. The conceptual drainage and pond siting analysis look at existing and proposed drainage conditions to identify issues and requirements for an overall stormwater management approach. Ponds are sized to mitigate stormwater runoff and to satisfy design requirements, taking into account alternative stormwater management options. The project alternative must incorporate recommendations from the environmental look-around process and include analysis of pond locations. Resource impacts are evaluated and preferred pond site locations are identified. Aesthetic qualities on ponds are considered on all projects. Drainage design and analysis is documented in the preliminary engineering report, the pond siting report as applicable, and is summarized in the environmental document. The pond siting report provides the details of the facility type, size, location, and costs. The concept drainage design report is prepared for projects in urban core areas where adjacent land is fully developed. The concept drainage design report analyzes water quality requirements with further expansion in the project's design phase. This concludes the review of the PD&E Manual Part 2, Chapter 11 for water quality and water quantity. The following